Welcome back to Real Talk with Brian and Dan on 1150 AM KKNW. I'm Brian.
And I'm Dan.
Our next guest is Scott Dideon with Green City Pest Control. Scott is a Board Certified Urban Entomologist and has been in the industry for over 30 years. Scott has been in the forefront of the changes in pest control in the Pacific Northwest due to the recent invasive pests like roof rats and odorous house ants. Never heard of them. I'm looking forward to hearing about that.
They smell bad.
They smell bad. Okay. Scott is the owner of Green City Pest Control and has designed low chemical approach to resolving pest issues with clients like the Woodland Park Zoo, National Institute of Health, and various lead accounts. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Hey, guys.
So tell us, what do you do when you're not out eradicating pests?
So I know hobbies are supposed to not necessarily be associated with work, but one of my hobbies tends to always be that at some point we've got some kind of animal living in our house that isn't normally supposed to be there.
Oh, does that include boomerang children? I'm kidding. Hey, Ben, pretend I didn't say that.
We've got plenty of kids. So I've got 4 teenagers and running my own business. And so a lot of kind of what keeps me distracted is either, like a tarantula or scorpions or thatcher ants. Or,
yeah.
Deer
tarantulas
mice.
Here?
Well, not here.
Not here. Okay.
But
so it's an intentional pet store get. These aren't invasive pets that are somehow in your house. Because I wouldn't trust you if you had a bunch of uninvited pests in your house.
Or these are pets that are given to me or I find or something like that. And and my wife is definitely not thrilled by that, but she's just kind of given in. And we've kind of delegated to some of it over to the office now. And
the pests?
The pets.
Pets. These are pets, not pests.
Both.
It depends if they're in the containment or not.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. So this is a show about, homes and living in houses. So tell us about what the home you grew up in.
So I grew up in Renton in the Bryn Mawr area or Skyway.
Oh, yeah.
And the house that I grew up in, my mom and my dad built, and then my mom and dad divorced, and my mom remarried and then expanded out when she remarried. What was unique about that house is they're obviously, when they did the expansion, they weren't necessarily navigating through what they were doing. We had, I think, 13 bedrooms in the end, or rooms that could be bedrooms. Some of them were really funky in size and stuff. But it was an interesting childhood, kind of growing up and kind of a very big house and secluded somewhat. But
did you have 12 brothers and sisters?
I did not.
Oh, okay.
I had 4.
Oh, okay. Well, then you could pick which room you wanted to stay in every so often.
That's right. We got to rotate through.
That's awesome.
Scott, compared to the past, why are rats now such a big deal in Seattle, Bellevue area? Is it construction, global warming? What's going on?
So, kind of as you mentioned early on, we've seen an increase in a rodent called roof rats, and that's they get their name from California when they would live in people's roofs in the attics, and they're originally from Asia, probably Indonesia, kind of the jungle environment.
It's not the Norwegian rat.
Not the Norway rat, right? And so the Norway rat is really the more traditional city rat that you would find around dumpsters and in the sewer system and stuff. The roof rat is very much more acclimated towards vegetation. They actually don't go after human garbage. They'll go after nuts and berries and plants and stuff like that. So they've kind of been in Seattle since the 1950s or so, but they were pretty much locked into the Seattle area. And then about 12, 15 years ago, they began to expand out into the suburbs, and they literally just exploded. And so what we've seen literally every year is more and more, cases of rats kind of moving into neighborhoods throughout, Bellevue, then Sammamish, and then North Bend.
Wow.
I'm down more in the South King County area, so we were seeing them in Renton, and then we began to see them in Maple Valley. And the past couple of years, we're seeing them in Enumclaw, and kind of the same also with Puyallup. And now reports are that roof rats are down in Olympia, and they're kind of traveling. They're going to basically kind of take over, in my opinion, probably the western part of our state.
So the second part of his question is what causes that expansion? Is it the global warming? Is it the right? Or just do they hop a ride on a construction truck and now they're down, in Maple Valley?
So, it's like any invasive pest, whether it's gypsy moths or the Norway rat, which is actually an invasive rodent, or roof rats or house mice. If they find a niche and they can capitalize on that niche, there's usually not predators to take them out. And that's the same with roof rats. They found a niche that works really well with them. They can reproduce. They reproduce like crazy, and they don't have a lot of predators. And
is the coyote a predator?
The coyote is a predator, but there's a lot of rats.
Not enough.
Yeah,
Right.
There's not enough of them.
Bring back the coyotes.
Yeah, they're here.
No, I'm actually just started reading a book on coyotes. It was very fascinating. I can't remember. Coyote America. If you're interested in that, it'd be interesting. I digress. All right.
Do I keep one as a pet? That's the question.
I don't know. They've
No.
got a very interesting North American history. I have to say that. All right. So from a practical sense, right, we've referred you to many of our clients, whether they're just buying a home or they're getting ready to sell a home. Sometimes people don't know what's going on. So what can a seller do, right, to become proactive and prevent rodents from being an issue in the sale of their home?
Well, definitely for a seller, if they're, when they get to that position where they're having their home inspected and then a home inspector goes through and he's taking pictures, probably what you don't want is for that inspector to get a picture of a dead rat and then have that sent off to the buyer. You never quite, a lot of buyers may say that's not a big deal. I kind of know that going into it, but you never know what's going to happen. So if you can circumvent that first and reduce that possibility, that's probably a wise move.
In advance of going to the market.
That's right. Yeah.
That's why one of the reasons why we get our home inspected before it goes to market, because I don't know about you, Brian, but I don't like going in my crawl space.
That's what the inspectors...
And that's probably a lot of sellers. They don't want to go down there. They've not been down there. They don't have any clue what could be happening.
That's why the inspectors get the big bucks.
Yeah,
they go
the
down
big
there.
bucks.
That's right. Yeah, and you, I'm sure.
Well, and Brian, even as you said, most homeowners, even if you go down, you're not going to go down like a home inspector would.
Right.
Hopefully, they're going to be more thorough, and so it's still better to hire somebody to do that. Probably.
So why should buyers be concerned about rodent issues? I know this is kind of obvious question, but from your perspective.
Yeah. So kind of what's happening with the roof rats is, while in California they were predominantly in the attics, up here in Washington State or in King County they're in the attics, but they're really also in the crawl spaces. And they'll get up into the insulation that's right below the subflooring and destroy that. To thoroughly go through, replace, remove, kind of seal things up and get rid of the rats, you could be talking for the average crawl space $4,000 to $5,000 easily.
Wow.
So if you're a buyer, and that's
a big deal.
Could be a big deal, and it's something to keep in mind, and that as long as you're planning that out, that's okay. But you don't want that to be a big surprise after you've just bought the house.
Okay, so that's roof rats. What are deer mice? What's the difference, and why would they be a concern to a buyer?
Okay, so deer mice, we're familiar with the house mouse, and that's kind of the standard mouse that we're thinking of. Deer mice are native field mice in our area, and they're actually the predominant mice that people would run into. They're beautiful animals. They love the woods, but they'll actually kind of move into the insulation and kind of nest and then go outside to feed. Every once in a while, they'll kind of run out of food outside, or they'll run out of the seeds or whatever they're feeding off of, and they'll move further into the house and then pop up and down.
So that's different than roof rats? Won't do that?
Well, roof rats typically don't move into the living space.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, deer mice will.
The mice do.
The mice will.
Yeah.
It's a little easier for them to get through. But deer mice are the ones that carry the hantavirus, and so you don't want them in your garage or tucked away someplace. And the key there is just, if they are there, then you want to make sure you're following certain precautions.
The what virus? That sounds bad. What is this?
It's called hantavirus.
It is bad. Yep.
Yeah. It's definitely something to be concerned about. It could be potentially lethal, and there are some health issues. Not something maybe to freak out over, but you do want to you don't want to have deer mice living like crazy in your garage.
Bottom line is, a home is for people, not mice.
That's right.
So I heard people say they have cats. Won't they take care of the problem?
So cats are really good at taking out mice occasionally, and then also moles, and maybe juvenile rats. But usually the adult rats, they just kind of watch. Every once in a while, you might get a mouser that'll be pretty aggressive, but it's really pretty rare.
Okay.
Good to know.
So how do you know if the activity is current activity or old activity?
That's really tough. And that's one of the things that most people say is like, well, I went in my crawl space and it's just old droppings.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for over 31 years, and I can tell if it's really, really fresh, but I can't tell if it's 1 week or or a month old. If it's got dust on it, then it's probably old. Then it may be a year old or something like that. But outside of that, it's really hard to kind of gauge. It's better to assume, with the amount of rodent activity that we're seeing consistently, to assume that it's probably not old.
So you mentioned the solution with when they get into a crawl space is generally to take out all the insulation, seal. Tell me about the process.
Sure. Yeah, so the goal is for crawl spaces, you want to exclude out the rodents. And so you want to seal out all the entry points that they could get in. But to do that, there are cases where insulation will have to be removed to even do that properly. And by the time it reaches that point, frequently there could be nests of rodent activity in that insulation. It's just usually better just to remove it all, start fresh, remove the vapor barrier, all the debris, and then make sure it's properly sealed, and then look at putting new insulation in.
And then you have to treat it from there for a few months to make sure that there's no return stuff? Or?
That's correct. So you want to at least monitor it and manage it for a while. Honestly, though, with the rodent pressure that we're seeing consistently, we're seeing more and more of a tendency to kind of move towards a regular program. Washington State used to be one of the few places where there wasn't a lot of pest control. That's changing, and really in the end, probably in many cases, going on to a regular program is not a bad idea.
I know a lot of people that move here from around the area. It's an automatic.
Yep.
So I grew up here, so I never even knew it.
So should we be concerned about termites or other wood-destroying insects, organisms?
To a degree, yes.
Yeah.
In the Bellevue area or the King County area, powder post beetles are a concern, but they're not a major concern.
Do we see termites here?
We do see termites. Not as often in Bellevue, but we'll see them in other parts of Seattle. There are some pockets of areas where we have seen them. And the termite in particular is the subterranean termite, or the western subterranean termite, which is from California. And
Dang, California Asian.
I knew that was going to happen. But over the past 50 years, they've been gradually moving north, and they're in Canada now. But we're seeing where it's kind of standard now, where termites are popping up consistently in certain areas. Their subterranean termites are. We also have the dampwood termite, which is a native termite, and that typically only infests like tree stumps and stuff like that. It's the western subterranean that would be concerned for a home.
Okay, before I run out of time,
Sure.
What is an odorous house ant?
So odorous house ants are it's an invasive ant that came to King County
from California.
California?
No.
Oh, okay.
We're going to pick on this time. Yeah.
No, originally from Asia, actually landed in Florida about 25 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Worked his way across the country, was just kind of moving in every state, and then popped up here in King County about 8 years ago. And it's the type of ant, typically the colony has about 30 to 40 queens. So if you spray, what that colony does is they tend to split. And so you'll kill half the ants, but if you don't kill all the queens,
They leave with the queen. Yep.
And you may have two colonies at that point developing. So it's become it's a nuisance pest, doesn't do any structural damage, but it's become a real nuisance. And you just have to kind of strategize in how you're going to do it appropriately.
All right. Well, how can people get in contact with you?
Probably best way is either through the website, which is www.greencitypestcontrol.com, or you can call us directly at 425-413-9700.
Scott, thanks so much for coming in today.
Thanks. That was a lot of fun.
You're listening to Real Talk with Brian and Dan at 1150 KKNW. After the break, we have some more Real Talk, and I, of course, have some great final thoughts. Dan, don't laugh so loud. Pal.
Sorry.
We'll be right back.